What's going on, everybody? This is Al from PlaybookGamer.com, and today I want to talk about the new preseason top 25 coaches poll that came out a few days ago. Now, it's been a while since I've talked any real college football with you all, and I figured this would be a good topic to get into. I hope to do more of this, and I think covering the top 25 preseason poll just is a nice way for me to kind of give you my predictions, kind of sort of just my thoughts in general on the beginning of the season, where some of these teams may end up, and so on and so forth. Now, what I'm going to do is just kind of go through each team, kind of give you my thoughts on each, and maybe some teams that were outside of the top 25. Now, let's start off with the top four. I want to group these four together. Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. These have been the same four teams for I don't know how long, 6-7 years. So it doesn't shock me. Those four have been stuck there. Now, Alabama, I fully expect to win it all this year. I'll go ahead and put that out there. Nick Saban usually does a pretty good job of winning a national title about every other season, so I think he's due for one. They're loaded. Their schedule isn't all that tough. Yes, they're in the SEC. It will be a challenge. Now, the only real non-conference game that's going to be a toughie, I guess, is Texas, but I expect Alabama to beat them by at least a couple touchdowns. Now, you notice they got 54 first-place votes, so that doesn't really shock me either. I just think they're loaded for bear, and they may lose one game in the regular season, but they should cruise right on into the playoff. Now, Ohio State, pretty much the same thing. They'll have Michigan, and they'll have Michigan State, and maybe somebody over from the other division to deal with. But I fully expect Ohio State to probably go undefeated, maybe lose a game. So it doesn't surprise me that they're number two. Now, Ryan Day, I think he's done a great job recruiting, keeping things afloat ever since Urban Meyer left. So I think all will be well in Buckeye land as long as he's still there, especially the way recruiting's been going for them. They've been doing a really good job with that. Georgia, your reigning national champions. It doesn't shock me that they're there either. They got a lot of guys coming back, at least on offense. They lost a lot of players on defense, but they've been recruiting at such a high level the last several years. They should reload, and I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't know who they got in the other division, but they may lose one game in the regular season, if that. I fully expect Bama and Georgia to play each other again in the conference championship game. Then you got Clemson. Now, Clemson had a bit of a down year last year. The quarterback, Ungalele, I'm pretty sure I butchered his name there. I'm sorry. He had a bit of a slow start at the beginning of last year, but they picked things up. I think they finished, 10-3? It was just a very quiet season for them because it was such a slow start. I think they're going to play a little bit better. Now, I did look at their schedule. I don't have it in front of me, but I think they have one of the easiest schedules. They don't play anybody. No offense to them nor the ACC, but it should be a cakewalk. So there's your top four. Pretty standard stuff that we've seen for so many years. Now let's go to number 5, Notre Dame. They got a new coach, Marcus Freeman. He was the defensive coordinator for them for several years. Brian Kelly's now at LSU, so Freeman has taken over. Brand new coach. He will have a lot of talent to play with. I think they'll be just fine. But when you got a new coach, you have no clue how he'll succeed or fail. But Notre Dame's been a consistent top 10 team for years. My guess is Marcus Freeman will be no different than Ryan Day at Ohio State. I don't think he'll do anything to really hurt the program, but I could be dead wrong. Michigan had an amazing season last year. Jim Harbaugh, he finally got past that Ohio State hump. He got into the playoffs, and he got shellacked in that first game. But still, they had a great season, and that's why they're in the top 10 still. From what I remember, he's been recruiting halfway decent, so kudos to them. They're doing just fine. At least they can still compete with Ohio State and such in the Big Ten, along with like Penn State. Texas A&M, they had the big upset over Alabama last year. Now, they brought in the number 1 recruiting class. They're all true freshmen this year. I don't know how many of them are going to play and such, but they're going to be a tough out for any team they play. So it doesn't shock me that they are in the top 10. Now, Utah's an interesting animal. Nobody talks about them too much, but they quietly kind of do their thing out in the Pac-12. Now, their first game, I'm pretty sure, is against Florida. That'll be interesting. I hope Utah beats Florida badly. No offense to the Gators. As we all know, I'm a big Tennessee fan. That should be a fun game. Make sure you watch that one. But it's cool to see Utah in the top 10. Now, Tyrone Willingham, he has been there since the Bush administration. That was back in 2005. That's when Urban Meyer left Utah to go to Florida. Small world, which is pretty cool. And he's still there, still doing his thing. He's got a really good program going. Oklahoma, now they've had an interesting offseason. Lincoln Riley left to go to USC. In comes Brent Venables. I know they had a bit of a tough situation with their wide receivers coach this week, but they're going to have a lot of talent. I like Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator he brought in from Ole Miss. Pretty much the same offense like Josh Heupel runs at Tennessee, kind of, sort of. But him and Kiffin, if you remember that offense down in Oxford last year, they had just an incredible go of it. And it wouldn't shock me if Oklahoma kind of does the same thing they've always done. But it's a brand new coach. I have no clue if Brent Venables is going to be any good or not. My guess is he'll probably do just fine. Pretty much any coach is set up to succeed at Oklahoma. Then you got Baylor. Good to see Baylor, after the whole Art Briles stuff. You would think going through something like that, they would not be able to get anything done. But they've had two coaches since then, and both of them have done well. I already forgot the guy's name. He's the Carolina Panthers head coach. I can see his face. Anyway, him and Dave Aranda, who's now the head coach, had a great season last year. Cool to see them in the top 10. That's what happens when you have a really good season. You get recognized in the next season, which is what you see here now. Is 10 a little high for Baylor? I don't know. I mean, how do you compare, between Baylor and a few of these other ones? Now, speaking of, you notice right here, we got a little string of Big 12 teams. Then you got Oklahoma State right behind Baylor. Mike Gundy has been there, honestly, since the Bush administration. I think he's been there for well over 15, 17, 18 years, probably longer than that. I think he took over Les Miles when he went to LSU, but Oklahoma State, they always kind of do their thing. They never really do any hard recruiting, but they just kind of have their own system in place. He rotates coordinators out all the time, and they still win a lot of games. It's about to the point where you just can't count them out anymore. As long as they got a decent quarterback, they usually are pretty fine. Now, number 12, Oregon, another coaching shift. Mario Cristobal, he's now at Miami. Then they got Dan Lanning. I may have messed up his name there. He was the defense coordinator of Georgia last year. Now he is at Oregon, first-time head coach. You kind of see a theme with some of these teams, a lot of first-time head coaches. It's Oregon. You really have to do bad things in order for them to fail there. It's a nice little system set up. As long as you kind of know what you're doing, we'll see if he does. But they're in the top 12. They always kind of win 9 to 11 games every season. NC State, this is kind of a surprise for me. They're one team in the ACC that, like, nobody talks about. They're just always there. But apparently they had a good season last year. I didn't watch one down of football from them. Now, Dave Doring, is their head coach, and he almost came to Tennessee several years back. I'm glad he didn't. We didn't want him. No offense to him. We just thought he wasn't the right fit for us. But he's finally getting it going. He's been there for quite a while. So it's pretty interesting to see them at 13, but that's pretty much because they had a good season last year, so they're going to get recognized for it this year. Then you got Michigan State. I already forgot the coach's name. He had a really good season last year. I think they lost that running back, the Walker kid. I think he went pro. But he had a really good season at his first year, and he continues to do pretty good things. Now, this could be his third year. Forgive me if I mess up on the years there. But they're going to be right there with Michigan and Ohio State kind of competing for the Big Ten, especially in that one division, along with Penn State, which I'm sure we'll see here in a little bit. Then you got USC. This is a little surprising to me only because maybe they just think Lincoln Riley is just a miracle man. Now, they got some talent over there, but they just always were just average for so many years, the last 5 or 6 years. But maybe they expect him to come in with the other quarterback who came with him from Oklahoma. They may do just fine. Now, one thing they got going for them is the Pac-12 just isn't very talented. No offense to them, but you got like Utah, Oregon, and that's kind of it. So USC may have a chance to go right in there to compete out of the gate. But Lincoln Riley, he's a pretty talented coach. Next up, we got Pitt. Now, they had a offensive coordinator change. I already forgot the guy's name, but the guy that they did have is now at Nebraska. They got a new quarterback. It's the Clovis kid, I think is his last name, who came from USC. The Addison kid, the wide receivers at USC. So Pitt and USC have a lot of things going between the two this season. But they are expecting to have a pretty good season. It's obvious they're in the top 25. The reason I know this is because Tennessee plays them in week 2. So if you want to see an interesting game, make sure you watch that one. They're expecting to have really good offense and defensive lines. That's what worries us a little bit as Tennessee fans, is how good are they up front. Now, we don't expect a whole lot on the outside, like from their skill players. But They had a really good season last year, so again, the theme is you got to get rewarded in the top 25 here. Next up is Miami of Florida. Now, Mario Cristobal, this is his first season down there. Again, this is like, the fifth new head coach we've mentioned. Now, he's been a head coach for quite a while, and recruiting, he is killing it out of the gate so far. They are a little collective down there. They're pretty much just throwing money at anybody who is willing to take it. He'll probably do just fine down there. Now, if Cristobal can't get it done down there, I don't know if anybody can at this point, but he used to play there. I think that'll really work out for him in Miami. I think it's good for college football if Miami gets back to where they used to be, so I wouldn't mind if they see that. Plus, me being a Tennessee fan, I always want to see Florida to kind of struggle in the state of Florida with recruiting, and it helps if Miami is right up there with them. Next up, we got Texas, and this is the interesting thing. Now, you notice I haven't been talking too much about the first place votes. If you go back to the very top, your top four teams, your top three, I should say, had first place votes of some sort. But then you go all the way down here, and guess what? Texas got a first place vote. Makes no sense, but we kind of know why, who picked that or who made that vote. Either way, Steve Sarkeesian, second year, I think they're going to get better. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Sarkeesian in terms of him just being like the next great one. I fully expect him to do really no different than what he done like at Washington or USC. He's just there. I think he's a really good play caller. I hope I'm wrong. I got nothing against Texas, but I just don't expect them to. They'll probably go 8 or 9 wins this year, so is that worthy of being 18th in the country? I guess. I'm not really sure. I think they're going to have a hard time battling Oklahoma State, and Baylor, but who knows? They may really surprise some people. They may give Alabama a good game. Next up, Wake Forest. It's not a shocker if you keep up with college football. Last year, they had a really good season. Dave Clawson, he's been there for several years. He used to be at Tennessee for one season as offensive coordinator, so I know a little bit about the guy. And he failed miserably. He pretty much got Philip Fulmer fired. But what's cool about Clawson is he went to Bowling Green, done some things there, and then he came to Wake. And you need to watch Wake Forest play. Their offense is really cool. They do that really slow motion RPO. Not a lot of teams do what they do. So if you want to see something a little bit different but still kind of modern, make sure you watch Wake Forest. But it doesn't shock me that they are in the top 25. They got a really good team. They played really well last year, so everybody's kind of expecting them to kind of do the same this year. Next up, we got Wisconsin up the Great North, another Big Ten team. I don't watch them as much. I think they've been doing the same thing for years. They just run the ball, do a little play action off of that. They'll probably win their 8 or 9 games like they always do. So I don't really have anything else to say about Wisconsin. No offense to them. I hope they do just fine. I got nothing against them. Next up, we got Kentucky. Now, Mark Stoops has done an amazing job there. Now, you may say that to some Kentucky fans, and they may think you're lying, but I vividly remember what they've been like before. And them going, 8, 9, maybe even 10 wins every year, they need to be thankful that they have a coach that can get them to that point. And he's just done a very good, consistent job. He's recruited well. One advantage Kentucky has over all the other schools in the SEC is that they are close to the state of Ohio. He's recruited Ohio very well. That's what any successful UK coach needs to do, and he's been doing that very well. Now, they got a really good quarterback, Will Levis. They're projecting him to be like a top 10 pick next year just because he's your big old statuesque, 6'5", 240-pound quarterback who can throw it all over the field. And they run Sean McVay's offense with the LA Rams kind of sort of. Now, they lost their offensive coordinator. I think he went back to LA if I'm not mistaken. But they brought another NFL offensive coordinator. So if you're into that type of offense, make sure you watch Kentucky. That's pretty cool to watch. Next up, we got the last few, and that is Cincinnati at 22. They had their biggest season ever, I guess, last year. Good for them. I think Luke Fickell is a really good coach. I think a lot of Ohio State fans would rather see him at Ohio State than Ryan Day. But I think you're fine with Ryan Day. But anyway, Luke Fickell has done whatever you could possibly think of on a positive front in Cincinnati. Now, are they going to be as good as they were last year? My guess is probably not. They may lose like maybe 1 or 2 games, but if they go 10-2, 11-1, it'll be a very successful season. And he's recruited very well for them for what little that they have there. Next up, we got Arkansas. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Now, they have been a dark horse for a while. I think they've recruited well, and I can't believe the guy's name escapes me, their head coach. I can see his face. He used to be offensive line coach at Tennessee. either way, he's done a really good job there. They got a really good quarterback. They run similar like the veer and shoot, like Ole Miss runs, Oklahoma's going to run, Tennessee runs, kind of similar to that. Art Briles' son, I already forgot his first name. Forgive me, I'm forgetting some names. I don't have anything in front of me. But they had a really good season last year. I fully expect them to go like 9 and maybe 10 wins. Just kind of depends on their schedule and such. Next up, we got Ole Miss. Now, they lost their quarterback, Matt Corral, but Kiffin is still there. He's a very good play caller. I don't know how they've done, like, replacing players, and they got to replace their offensive coordinator. Now, no Kiffin and Levy. I don't know how often or how they split up the play calling duties. I'm sure they're going to be just fine on offense, but they continually get better. I just don't know how well they've been recruiting. Now, last but not least, we got Houston. Now, Dana Holgorsen has done a really good job there. He slowly built it back up. They were an afterthought last year because of Cincinnati, which just dominated that conference. But Houston, they expect them. It wouldn't shock me if Houston comes out on top in that conference. But Holgersen's done a good job there. Been running that pretty much his version of the air raid for years. And it's cool to see them in the top 25. Now, we could talk about some teams that did not get in the top 25. You got Iowa, Penn State, and there's my beloved Vols. I'm surprised they didn't get in. A lot of other top 25 polls I've been seeing, they've been in the top 15, the top 20. But for whatever reason, the coaches felt like we weren't there. That's fine. We can use that as motivation heading into the season. You got, BYU, LSU. It wouldn't shock me if LSU bumps right back up because Brian Kelly he's a really good coach. And Auburn, I'm surprised that Auburn is that high, to be honest. I think their coach, that's just an iffy situation. And I'm not going to go through the rest of these, but here they are. You can look at them for yourself. Now, that is pretty much it. I think that's a simple video to do, just kind of me giving you my thoughts. Now, I can cover more real college football stuff in the future, maybe do some more playbook type things. Those are really hard to do, but maybe I can try to simplify those. But at least now we can talk about some real college football to go along with all of my gaming stuff that I've been doing. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.